Hey everyone, this is Yvette Hampton. Welcome back to the Schoolhouse Rocked podcast. I have a really fun guest on with me today. Some of you may not know his name, but you've definitely become familiar with some of his work. And some of you may know his name and you're listening to this podcast because you are familiar with him and excited to hear just some of his journey. His name is Aaron Burns, and Aaron is a producer, a movie producer, and he has acted in several different movies, and he has worked on some movies that I'm sure many of you have seen before. Beyond the Mask is one of his biggest productions he's done. He's also worked on War Room, and most recently, he has been working on Overcomer, which is the new movie that's coming out in, I think, August by the Kendrick brothers. So we are super excited to have you on the podcast today. Aaron, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. It's a real pleasure to be here today.
Yeah, thank you so much. We got to meet you back in I think it was February or March. I actually can't even remember what month it was now, but it was at the Christian Worldview Film Festival in Tennessee. And right. And you're a riot.
We have a lot of fun at that event. And for people who are interested in filmmaking and storytelling, we encourage, any families or kids who want to get involved in that to come down every March in the Nashville area, Christian Worldview Film Festival.
Okay, so it was March. So yes, It is one of our favorite events. We actually have been the last 2 years to that event, and we are always so incredibly blown away by just the speakers, the encouragement, the training, everything that comes with that. And then at the end of the week, you guys do this big kind of award ceremony, and it's fun and flashy, and it kind of makes everyone feel kind of Hollywood star-ish. And and so you got to MC that, and that was a lot of fun. And by the way, Schoolhouse Rocked won this year. We won Best Film Trailer. So that was really exciting.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it was very exciting. We were surprised to win that. And so very honored to get that award. So anyway, well, tell us about you, because you were homeschooled growing up. You now have 3 little ones yourself. Tell us about you and your family.
Yeah, well, it's always an interesting question where to begin. But I was homeschooled and really enjoyed that journey. So my parents were both first-generation believers who wanted to just raise us in a way that would be honoring to the Lord. And so back then, homeschooling was kind of a newer thing. Mm-hmm. And now it's, very much more established, because you say, well, George Washington was homeschooled. Right. So it's been around for a while, but it was more cutting edge. We didn't have all the resources that we had today, but mm-hmm. had a lot of fun with it. My mom loved history and loved teaching us and literature and reading. So that's something that we spent a lot of time reading great books and studying characters from the past. And my dad is a storyteller. So he'd constantly be telling us, every night, but, oh, Dad, could you tell us another story? And so kind of that influence on me growing up with history and literature and reading and storytelling is a huge part of what shaped my passion to tell stories to reach a generation today with the medium of film. And honestly, we didn't watch that many movies or really hardly any TV shows mm-hmm. as kids, but it was a curiosity around those things and awareness of the power of storytelling that led us to want to get involved. So when we were in high school, junior high, kind of that age, started playing around in the backyard. We started with the giant VHS camcorder, uh-huh. and we had a little mini DV camera that your mom would use to film a birthday party. And we're off in the backyard, shooting superhero movies and cowboy and Indian stories and all kinds of adventures like that. So I just had a great time with my cousins and siblings, and kind of I think that the nature of us being homeschooled and being thrown together all these times encouraged us to be creative and do things like that.
That's so cool. So your cousin Chad and mm-hmm. you have your own production company, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. And what have you done with your company? I know you did Beyond the Mask.
Yeah. So our family together made our first feature film, Pendragon, okay. and we released that back in 2009, I think. So it's crazy that it was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But that was our first feature, and it was literally probably 10, 12, 15 of us Burns working on that movie. I played the lead actor in it.
Nice.
Was an adventure for sure. We're making all our own costumes, and we built a giant Roman hill fort in the woods behind my dad's house, and built a real 20-foot trebuchet launching fire bombs and all these things, and wanting to tell a story about inspiring a generation to follow God's call on your life, and what God calls you to do, he gives you the grace to accomplish. And it was a lot of fun, but also a lot of challenge and a lot of learning. And it was kind of our version of film school, where we had literally no idea what we were doing when we got started. And it's trial and error. And you'd shoot a scene, you'd be like, that does not look good.
Doesn't look like it looked in your head, huh?
Yes. And so you try again and trial and error. We wound up shooting probably the movie like 1.5 times over the course of 3 years. And then we finished that and said, okay, well, let's move on with life. And I went off to college was working on my master's of business when we started distributing it. My cousin Chad was working on his PhD in engineering, and all of our other cousins and siblings were, heading their different directions. And a couple of things happened. One, this little movie we made, Pendragon, started to pick up some steam in distribution in Christian bookstores and TV here in the States and overseas. It's all of a sudden it's in 12 countries and 4 or 5 languages, and we're getting letters back from kids all over the world said, hey, your movie's different. It's a faith-based adventure story that exalts Christ, and we loved it. When are you going to make your next movie? And we're like, kind of hit us by surprise in a way. And at the same time, God had put a mentor in my life who was discipling me and encouraging me and pushing me to really flesh out this faith, this religion, this God that you've grown up with. What does that really mean for you? What does it really look like? And so I started to really grow in my personal relationship with the Lord, and then want to start sharing that with others. So all these things were kind of happening at the same time that God just really put a burden on our hearts. I was in an entrepreneurial marketing class, and the professor put up what he called a unique space map that would have these different quadrants and different projects and ideas. And he said, hey, if you're going to start a business, you have to find a way to compete differently. And I was like thinking of what business I would want to start, and then just realized we were kind of already doing this. With these Christ-centered adventure stories that wouldn't just reach, Christian women, or wouldn't reach just a secular audience, but would be gospel-centered, Christian worldview adventure stories that the whole family and particularly young people would enjoy. So kind of all these things were swirling, and we felt a clear call from the Lord back into pursuing filmmaking, and that's Beyond the Mask was kind of birthed out of that adventure. Then from there, we went on to help the Kendricks with a couple of their projects, War Room and Overcomer, and I'm shooting a project right now with some friends from Texas you guys can check out called Washington's Armor. It's a series about the life of young George Washington. And then we have a couple of other big projects that we're developing and would love your guys' prayers for.
Yes. And so where are you in production on those?
We have 2 feature films that are in development. One we've been developing for a couple of years, and we're almost done. We're kind of in the pitching to studios and potential investors, see who wants to get involved with it, praying through those decisions. But it's ready to shoot. We've finished our location scouting, and hundreds of pages of set designs and the script and all of these creative elements are all done. So we're in the pitching phase for that project. And then the other one is a little bit earlier in development. So those are both feature films. And then we have, like I said, I'm helping a friend shoot a project. We're in production right now. The TV show about George Washington. So. Okay. So cool. So this is what you do for a living. You've got your master's in business administration, and that I know, being a producer really is that you administer all the business of the film making. In many ways, yes. Yeah. So how has that coupled together with your education, with homeschooling, and now with filmmaking? How have you worked all of that together? Yeah, it's really a fun question, because the role that I have as a producer, you're really very split between creative and business and logistics. So an executive producer is specifically focused on the money side and the distribution side, But with my role as producer, I get to look very much on both sides. So you kind of take an idea. This is the story we want to tell.
Mm-hmm.
And it's my privilege to shepherd that story all the way through concept and all the way through distribution to getting in front of an audience.
Mm-hmm.
So we have what we call 5 phases of filmmaking. So the first one is development. It's, hey, I've got this idea. I want to make a movie about this theme. Okay, well, who are the characters going to be? Let's get together an outline. Let's get together, the script. And
Mm-hmm.
then you say, okay, well, where in the world are you going to shoot it? What is the budget you're going to shoot it for? Is this going to be animated or live action? Are you going to build all the sets? Is it going to be CG heavy? What kind of actors and who's the target audience? All those questions, creative, fun questions, happen in development. And that's one of my favorite phases because that's where the most creativity
Mm-hmm.
occurs. You're just throwing mud at the wall and dreaming and praying and planning.
Yeah.
So once you finish development, you say, this is exactly what the goal is. You have your financing and hopefully your distribution lined up. You move into the second phase, which is pre-production. And that's relatively short. That's a couple of months that you're getting the project rolling. You're hiring the actors, you're building the sets, you're making the costumes, you're getting all the gear and gathering your crew. And then the shortest phase of the project is actual production itself, where you're rolling cameras. That might be just 30 to 60 shooting days, depending
Mm-hmm.
on the scale of projects. A lot of projects, for instance, War Room, we shot in 30 days. Overcomer was like 32 shooting days. So you're only on set for 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And then you jump, there's a massive team, 120 or, depending if you have big extras. So you might have 300 people, 400 people working for you for a day of shooting. Then they all go home and you're left with a pile of hard drives. And then that starts, which is the editing, and you spend several months editing, and then you get to picture lock and you start doing the score and the visual effects and the music and the audio, and all those elements. So your team kind of grows again. Then you get to distribution, and that's taking the audience or taking the movie and getting it out to your audience. So those are kind of the phases, and it's been neat from definitely my homeschool background, being forced to collaborate with all of your different siblings in all different
Mm-hmm.
situations. I think naturally set me up to be comfortable with all the variety of different situations that we encountered when we first started doing movies. So it never was something that was really stressful or freaked us out at the beginning, because we kind of did this, and we started running these teams, which were basically, we're getting our siblings and our cousins and our friends to work for us, before it had just kind of transitioned out. And I think also, one of the values of the homeschooling for us is translating to filmmaking, particularly with the way our parents raised us, with that critical thinking along moral and spiritual issues.
Mm-hmm.
So something we spent a lot of time talking about and exploring. And also for us, it was a passion for history and literature.
Mm-hmm.
And those things, and then storytelling and valuing all of those elements. So the practical side of interacting with teams and getting to do bigger projects and stuff at an earlier age. And then the academic focus as well, and the way it kind of mentally and emotionally, spiritually shaped us to be storytellers. So we give my parents a lot of credit and a lot of gratitude for that.
Yeah, so cool. How many siblings do you have?
I'm one of 4.
Okay.
And then Chad, my other kind of set of cousins who did a lot of the movies with us, they have 5. So those are our core families we started with. And many of us are still involved in creative endeavors, and we'll jump together to work on projects at different times. So it's really fun.
That is so cool. We often talk about life schooling and the advantage of homeschooling, because you get to just do real life. We have some friends, the McCoskeys, and Matthew, their son, he's working on a film right now. And basically this whole school year, he has directed this film, and with a group of other friends of his and his siblings. And very much like you did with Pendragon, where they've done the costumes, they've done the sets, it's just incredible what these kids have done. And I was talking to his mom a few weeks ago, and she said, sometimes I think, man, we haven't really done very much spelling or math or writing this year. And I'm like, the kid's making a movie. It's incredible. These kids together, they've written the script, they've acted it out. They've had to do all the business behind it. They've had to do all the funding and financing behind it. It's just amazing. And when you think about education, whether it's homeschool, public school, private school, whatever, the whole goal of education is to raise up these children to become, productive, successful adults in the adult world. Well, when you get that firsthand experience, that hands-on experience, you don't need a classroom to do that. You get to actually do it in real life. And what an incredible blessing. How old were you when you did Pendragon?
So I was, Pendragon, we started writing when I was a senior in high school.
Okay.
So we'd been working for several years, made several big projects before that. But that was the first feature.
Okay. That is so cool. What an amazing opportunity you have had to do that. And our girls are very much in that same boat. We've been traveling and making this movie for the past 2.5 years. And so they've been able to see the business side of this and the filming side of it as well. Our 13-year-old, she's actually done some of the filming for the movie. So she'll have a camera credit on the movie, which is really cool. And it's just so much fun. And we get to just be a family and be together.
It's something that I really enjoy, being a family, being able to be together. That's a huge way to learn together and to learn in those real life situations and to get to see get to interact with your kids in a variety of different situations and talk through those life issues in the context of doing something together is something that we loved. We really enjoyed it.
Yeah, that's super cool. I want to continue talking about all of these things and about your relationship with your siblings and what it looks like now. But we're going to take a quick break to hear from a sponsor, and we will be right back. Hold on. Okay. We are back with Aaron Burns. Talk about your relationship with your siblings now. So now you grew up together, you got to do all kinds of fun projects together, you homeschooled together. What do your relationships look like now as adults?
Yeah, so my oldest sister, Marilyn, lives in Ireland now, but she went on a missions trip several years ago to Ireland and then married the camp director. So we kind of lost her over there, but she actually just had her first baby. So my parents are in Ireland this week visiting them. So, but that's, more challenging to keep in touch and work on things together, long distance. But then my younger brother, Nathan, so when we did Beyond the Mask, she was our wardrobe designer. So she did it for us. My younger sister, Shannon, is a photographer and a writer. And so she also manages a doctor's office in between writing gigs. So she is working for me now on Overcomer, doing their behind the scenes book. And then she did the same thing for us. She was our on-set photographer and did our behind the scenes book for Beyond the Mask. And then my youngest brother, Nathan, he's an engineer. So he did all our props and all our kind of mechanical work on Beyond the Mask. And then when he finished, he went to engineering school, and that's what he's doing now. So definitely homeschooling does not equal friction-free sibling relationships.
Sure.
There's no doubt about that. But I definitely enjoyed working with my siblings, getting a chance to work through some of those things and have a chance to spend time together and doing those. So yeah, they all, depending on the project and depending on their availability, they'll all jump back in and help us at various times with different elements of it. So it's really a lot of fun to still have that community. And we have our family WhatsApp thread, which we keep in touch that way, sharing, updates and answered prayers and prayer requests and challenges for the project and for family things. So that's something that we've really enjoyed using, even as our families spread around the globe, to still stay connected using our smartphones for something that's actually positive. So
yeah, they can be good sometimes. Looking back in your journey of being homeschooled as a kid, what would you do differently if you could have changed something about how you were homeschooled, or something with your I don't know, your family life or whatever? Is there anything that you would change?
Ouch! Now you're asking me to rat out my parents.
No. Nothing that's going to offend your mom or your dad.
Let's see.
And maybe even something like for yourself, like, I don't know, maybe
something I found is each kid is different.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, I really, so I composed the score. We did music lessons all growing up and playing orchestra stuff, which I loved. But for Pendragon, I composed the score for it with my sister. And I found myself getting depressed after working on it for 12 hours a day in the basement. And I'm like, I love music. I love music theory. I love composing. What is wrong with me? Why do I feel so sad right now? And I realized it's because I'm wired as an exhorter. I'm wired as a people person. And so some of that for me, I just don't do well by myself, spending days and days at a time. So looking back, most of my siblings could go either way. You know, they're not as much super hardwired towards, like my younger brother. He's very comfortable to spend a whole day by himself and work on things and be productive and get stuff done. And he's fine that way. But for me, being homeschooled, one of the things was, hey, I want to be talking, be doing more things. So in the later years of homeschooling, my parents put me on a basketball team, you know, at a local Christian school, and put me in orchestras and choirs and things, so that every day I was doing outside interaction. So that's something that I would encourage parents, and my parents were good about listening and having these conversations kind of throughout, but saying each kid is different. And just because it worked for one kid doesn't mean it's going to work for another, and being able to shape. And that's one of the values of homeschooling. You get to do whatever is helpful for your kid. So that's something that, you know, I think whenever we ran into one of those bumps, then we'd say, okay, well, what is an adjustment that we can make that would help you with your learning and those kind of things? I know I'm thinking back to some of the old curriculums that we used were pretty outdated, and like, you know, some of the phonics memorization books that we had back when I was a little kid. And you see, you know, your younger siblings have these fun games and songs and prizes and stuff. And say, what's up with that? I had to learn it the hard way. But overall, we did have a good experience. And I think once we kind of recognized the differences, you know, between different kids, that was a strength. Something else I'll say, and this is something that we learned with standards, and how do you decide, okay, as a homeschooler, you're keeping your kids out of public school. Okay, why did you decide to do that? Well, you know, lots of different reasons. But one element is we want to keep them protected from the world, right? I would encourage parents to really think about the choices they make in that category. And as you have high standards of what you will and won't watch, also remember that where does evil come from? Evil doesn't come from without, but comes from within our own hearts. So we are our own greatest danger to ourselves. And I think that's something that I wouldn't blame anyone but myself for this, but I grew up through high school and into college with more of a self-righteous bent. It's, I've kept myself clean from these different kind of things that other bad people do. Oh, no, that's not how it works. And yes, God cares about our actions and cares about our holiness and those things. But first of all, he cares about our hearts. He wants us to live and walk in humility and love and with him, and have that relationship with him. And out of our hearts flow what we do with our hands. So that's something that I think is something that we're talking about with my wife and I, with our kids, and processing through. And again, it's a new generation. Everything's changed. Like, you know, you couldn't even try to apply the same standards from a generation ago to today. So really thinking through those things and making sure that as we pray through what should those decisions be like, recognizing that no matter how we organize and structure things, it's ultimately the Lord that has to rule in our hearts and our lives.
Yeah. Let's park on that for a minute, because I think that's a really great point. And oftentimes, you know, homeschool parents can become kind of self-righteous in that idea of, well, we homeschool, so we're obviously so much, you know, better parents than other people who might put their kids in school. And obviously that's not true. Parents love their kids unconditionally with everything in them. But teaching our kids, you know, we want our girls to grow up to love Jesus with all their hearts. As you were growing up, when did you really recognize in yourself that your faith was becoming your own and not what your parents wanted it to be because you were homeschooled? Because that can often happen where, you know, I mean, we've seen it happen a whole lot where kids are homeschooled. And so parents are like, yep, box checked. Kids are homeschooled. We've done all the right things. We've checked all the right boxes. We've raised them up to love Jesus. and then they go out into the world and they just go off the rails. I mean, they don't know what to do with this whole world around them.
Mhm.
At what point did your faith become your own?
So I would say it's a gradual process, and I think some people will go and put like, this is the exact moment where you get saved. But I look at Peter, and did Peter become a believer in Jesus when he left everything to follow him? Was it when he made the profession that you are the Christ, the Son of the living God? Or was it in the fish fry on the beach where Jesus said, I forgive you and I want you to feed my sheep? Which one of those moments was it when his faith became real? And I know for me, it was a process over time. But I think so as long as you live under your parents' rule, you don't know for sure, in a way, if your faith is yours or it's their rules. And so there's this kind of transition moment where all of a sudden you realize you're not under their rule and you can make whatever decisions you want. And then you have to ask, okay, what do I really believe? Mm-hmm. So something that, again, my kids are little. I'm so much a learner in the parenting category, and it's something that I'm eager to get advice and input from others. But something that we've been praying about and thinking about is, okay, what can we do to give our kids more rope, as it were, to let them fail earlier, and let them try and learn and make mistakes while we still have a voice that we can speak into their lives. And what can we do to expose them to the world and expose them to these things in a way that there's not just this huge curiosity in mind, because they've been held back from all those things, but that we can expose them to it in a context that we can have a discussion about it and say, you see how these decisions, the Lord's set up the world, that if you make these decisions, this is where it leads. And those kind of questions and those kind of things, so that they're not sheltered, quote unquote, in such a way that when they leave, the curiosity is so strong, or the hatred of the way that we run things is so strong that they want to go out and explore it for themselves, but that we can experience that with them. So that's something that I don't know. Yeah. Now, I don't know practically how to execute on that, but that's something that we've talked about and thought about before.
Yeah, I think it's constantly a learning process. Our oldest is 13 right now, and we're hitting those teen years, and I feel like every day there's just a new excitement about the teen years and then a new challenge that comes with it. But it's really fun, because if we're intentional as parents and really paying attention to our kids and to their needs, like you said, in your family, you were able to talk through stuff with your parents. I think being open with our kids and being able to really talk with them and dig deep into their hearts and see, how are you really feeling about this? What are your thoughts on this? Let's walk through this together. It's such a joy to be able to do that. And sometimes it's a little bit scary, I'll be honest, because sometimes, my girls will say something. I'm like, that's not at all what we've taught you. That's not what we believe. That's not what God's word says. Where did you even get that from?
Something that I would add to that, I was just talking with a good friend of mine who's a pastor, a youth pastor, and we were talking about standards versus God's word. And I think that it's easy in young people's mind, or for all of us, to blur, okay, what does the Bible really say about that? And there's the huge hot button topics of, what you watch, what you listen to, what you wear, what you consume. And does the Bible really prescribe what kind of clothing we should wear? I don't think that it does. There's no verse that you can judge and say that clothing pleases God or not based on God's word. He gives us principles to apply.
Sure. Modesty.
Yeah, exactly. Modesty and appropriateness, and all these things that you can have the conversation. But when it comes down to applying those, then he doesn't give us specific standards for what kind of music to listen to, or even what to consume. So you can say, for my family, these are the principles, and be very clear about now there are some things that are right and wrong. God says, always tell the truth. God says, never cheat. God says that marriage is between a man and a woman. God says that, all these things that are very clear, very equivocal. But then there's also this moving out from there. How are you going to apply these things in your context? And that's where wisdom and all those other things come in. but making a clear distinction between this is what the Bible says and this is how we apply it. And then I think that was something that was a challenge for me in some of the church context and family context, because then you say, so that's a rule, that's something that they made us do or made us avoid. The Bible doesn't say anything about that. And so if we teach as doctrine the commandments of men, as Jesus warns against, then I think you can be in danger of saying, well, that's just your opinion, I'm throwing out the whole baby with the bathwater. So I think people should land and have very strong standards and very know exactly why they believe what they believe and why they have certain rules in their home. And I don't think rules in your home are a bad thing at all. You should absolutely have them. But be careful when you communicate in them that we make sure that we discuss, this is, the Bible actually says this. This is actually God's word. No, this is our application of it. And this might vary. And you might come to disagree with this someday. But that's okay, because while you're in our home, this is how we want to do it. Right. That's something that I think can be helpful as well.
Yes. Yep. I agree with you wholeheartedly. We are unfortunately out of time for the podcast, but if you have a few more minutes, I would love to continue the conversation, because I have a few more points that I want to talk about. I want to talk about advice that you would give to any aspiring filmmakers. I know that there are a whole lot of homeschool kids out there who really want to use the gifts that God's given them through film. And also, I want to talk about that specific thing about using the gifts and talents that God's given us for his kingdom. So you good to stand for a few more minutes?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. All right. So we will continue on for Backstage Pass members. For those of you listening to the podcast, if you are not familiar with the Backstage Pass membership, it is the Schoolhouse Rock Backstage Pass membership gives you access to bonus material from the podcast. It gives you all kinds of behind the scenes footage from Schoolhouse Rock, the movie that we're in production on right now, and lots of fun interviews and things like that. So, and it's a really great way to support the film right now. So we would love that. We would also love your prayers. If you guys would just continue praying for our family as we work through production on this movie. God is doing amazing things right now. And we are so grateful for those of you who have just stood by our sides and prayed for us over the last couple of years. We are so grateful for that. So please continue to do that. If you have not yet signed up for the newsletter, please do that. It's so funny. I talk to people all the time, and they'll ask me questions, and I'll say, well, did you get our latest update? And they'll say, well, no, I don't think I get your updates. I'm like, well, sign up for the newsletter and you'll know what's going on with us. So if you just go to schoolhouserocked.com, you'll just see a little form on the right side there that you can fill out, and that just goes to us, and you'll get our updates. But Aaron, thank you for your time today. Where can people find out more about you and what you're doing?
We have a website, Burns & Co. Productions. Okay. And then our Facebook page. I forget to be on the Mask Facebook page. We'll probably post updates there. Okay, sounds great. We'll put those links in the show notes. So thank you so much for being on today, and we will continue this conversation. Okay. All right. So hello to the Backstage Pass members who are joining us on video right now. Aaron, I want to talk about, because one of the things you actually mentioned this early in the conversation about Christian worldview and about using, just the gifts that God's given you, and you got to work through some of that as you were homeschooled as a kid. I love that your parents were intentional about storytelling and reading to you and doing all those things that really build relationships within the family. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that Garrett and I have been so very convicted of is that God has given every one of us a talent and a gift and an ability to do something for his kingdom. We are all put on this earth on purpose and for a purpose. Mm-hmm. And so we want to use those gifts that he's given us for his glory. Talk about that, because I know that you're very intentional about the films that you produce, and you don't make them just for entertainment, because that's Hollywood. That's what Hollywood does. Garrett worked in the Hollywood film industry for many, many years, and that's what Hollywood does. They make things for money and for entertainment. Those are the two reasons. Mm-hmm. Christian film is a very different thing. So I would love to hear from your perspective. Why do you do this? Why do you do what you do? That is a great question. And there's a couple of elements there. One, I'll just start by saying I think there's a spectrum that for films that are great to make. And I don't think anybody has to make just one kind of film, that one kind of film is necessarily better than another. So if you look at in the Bible, There's all different kinds of literature, right? And some of them, you look at, prophecy, like Revelation or something like that, or you look at the Proverbs and Psalms or Ecclesiastes, and some of these, like, you have to really dig to get exactly what the point is that they're trying to make. Or some of them are just stories. There's an Old Testament narrative about a bear who comes out and eats kids who make fun of an old guy. And you're like, okay, now what is the moral lesson I'm supposed to make from that? And it takes a little bit of digging and nuance. So I think, but all of the Bible, all of the stories that God chose to put in his word for us are very intentional. Mm-hmm. And they're coming from the worldview that God is the sovereign creator and he has a plan for all of these things. And it's all part of the larger history. So I would say and then of course, biblically, then you have the book of Romans, which is like, okay, this is a 15, 16 chapters on the nature of salvation and sin and grace and justification, how that all works. And God's sovereignty all wrapped through it. So it's like, okay, wow, this is like heavy theology. And there's God says all of those are important for us to consume. So with filmmaking, with movies like War Room and Overcomer, those are specifically theme driven with one idea that we're trying to communicate to the audience. So War Room, it's the importance and power of prayer. For Overcomer, that is the importance of finding our identity in Christ and who we are fundamentally, knowing that our first primary role is that I'm a child of God. Mm-hmm. With a movie like Beyond the Mask, we looked at the theme of identity and redemption through the question of what does it take to make me okay? But it's also targeted at a little bit of a younger audience. There's more adventure elements and more storytelling elements and more entertainment elements in there. So our goal with Beyond the Mask was to get a younger audience, to get a family together who would watch it, and it'd be something that would start the wheels spinning. And as you know, we've had kids who, I've watched your movie 30 times. It's like, well, you should probably branch out. But I'm glad that you enjoyed it. But there was movies like that when I was a kid that you watch over and over, and you can quote the lines, and it becomes something that goes deep down inside your heart and your soul, and it becomes a part of the fabric of your worldview. Mm-hmm. So I see a spectrum and a continuum of movies that are very theme-driven. It's almost a sermon baked into a film, all the way over, past Beyond the Mask to just allegorical movies, or movies that just hold up the ideas of beauty and truth and justice. And so I think there's room in the space for all of those different things. But for me, specifically, Hollywood does a great job making movies. Like, I enjoy watching Hollywood movies, many of them, they're fantastic. Yep. So I don't feel a calling just to make movies that are entertaining or just that highlight an element. I love stories that specifically ask an audience challenging questions and encourage them with gospel-centered truths. So for me, that was kind of, as a kid growing up, we didn't watch very many movies. And so I kind of have a passion to say, I'd like to make movies that I can watch with my family. And that would encourage them and inspire them, particularly leaning a little bit younger and a little bit more male in the audience with some of those adventure elements. Because I think a lot of the faith-based movies of the last decade tend to be heavily towards the female audience, the middle-aged to older, or the main audience. So we'd love to bring it kind of more back in the center so that it's young, old, male, and female alike would enjoy some of these, and particularly in the adventure story space. And also, we love, we're exploring projects that are true life stories of the gospel's power. And those are things that you can debate a fictional story, but a true life story, this actually happened. So that's something that I grew up loving biographies, and we're working on some projects that are in that space as well. Let me say one more thing in regards to using your gifts. And this ties into the comment I was making about Overcomer. Ephesians is the identity book in the New Testament. So Ephesians 1 and 2 detail who we are as a child of God. And you could say, well, what's my identity? Well, I'm a dad. I'm a husband. I'm a filmmaker. I'm a homeschool graduate. All these different identity elements that you might put on yourself, those things all will come and go at different times in your life. People ask you, are you homeschooled? It's like, well, over a decade ago I was, but now I'm not. But some of those things, they're transient, right? But the fundamental core identity that we have as believers, you are a beloved child of God. You've been forgiven. You've been given grace. You've been given a purpose. Ephesians 2:8-9 are famous verses. By grace you've been saved through faith, not of your own doing. This is a gift of God. But then Ephesians 2:10, for we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works. And what a joy that it is to know that God has created you with specific things that he wants you to do, and to learn to walk in those, and pray that he would reveal those to you. And it doesn't always come easily or quickly. Sometimes I think of David, who wanted to build the temple.
Yeah.
And God said, no, I want you to assemble the materials for it, but that's a task that I have for somebody else. Or God, said with Abraham, hey, I want you to go create a new nation. So, okay, great. But then it's, generations before those things are fulfilled. So God has a purpose for each of us. We don't know exactly where we fit into the journey necessarily, but it's exciting when we rest in our identity as his beloved child. Then those other things don't have to matter as much. And if I never get to produce a movie, which would make me sad, because I have some movies that I'm super passionate about. I know the Lord has wanted me to be working on those. But if I never get to, is that going to be okay? Or am I going to be crushed because of that? And if my identity is I'm a filmmaker, then I'd be crushed. But if my identity is I'm a beloved son of the King, then it's going to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. That's right. And God is such a faithful God. It's so amazing to see when we are obedient to what he's called us to do. It often does not look like what we think it's going to look like. Yes. We look at our family over the past 3 years and some listening to this know our story, some don't. But, we sold everything. We sold our house. We sold all of our stuff. We loaded up in an RV and we literally drove out of California kind of aimlessly, not really knowing where the Lord was going to take us. And we just knew he had put it on our hearts to film this documentary on homeschooling. And it's not because homeschooling is the only saving, grace in a person's life, but he's just given us a passion for it. And so here we are making this movie, but just being obedient to God, it's amazing to see his hand at work when we're just willing to say yes. And it has not at all turned out like how we thought it would turn out or unfolded that way, but it's been so much better.
Yes.
Yeah, so much better. He is a good God. And just being completely surrendered to him every day waking up, just saying, okay, God, use me how you choose to use me and our family. We always pray in the morning together as a family, God, help us to serve you well today. Whatever we do, whether we're washing dishes or making a movie, it doesn't matter. Whatever we're doing, help us to serve you well with all our hearts. That's right. Because that's what it's all about. So I love your answer. I love that so much. Talk really quickly to those listening. I'm hoping that there's some homeschool kids listening and maybe their parents are listening and they'll bring their kids on later to listen to this, who are maybe thinking about getting into filmmaking. What would you say to encourage those kids?
Well, I don't have much encouragement for you. It is really, really hard. Yep. It is a challenging life. It is a challenging ministry and calling. But I would say, first of all, the first encouragement is prepare for a lot of discouragement and a lot of ups and downs. And Yvette and I were talking about this before we got on this, the roller coaster nature of the filmmaking world, all the uncertainty that you deal with on a weekly, monthly, and yearly basis. It is very challenging. So prepare yourself for that. But also, the theme of the first feature I ever made was, if God calls you to do it, he will give you the grace to accomplish it.
That's right.
And I still believe that. So if God is leading you into this space, then it's going to be a fun ride. And you're going to be excited to see what he does. So a couple of things that I'd mention. One is a life philosophy of mine, and I call it the learning spiral. The best way to learn anything is by doing these three ideas and repeating them. So first, you do it and just get out there and try. So it would be impossible. It'd be very easy for you guys to get a hold of a camera, whether it's on a phone or a GoPro. You can buy a used iPhone for $20 on Amazon and start shooting your movie. Just try it. Just see what happens. So that's the first step. You do it. Then the next step is you study it and watch YouTube video tutorials and get books on filmmaking and actually study the craft. And then the third is to watch others do it and learn from mentors. And so once you have a chance to do it yourself, to study it, and then watch other people do it, then you repeat that cycle again. And over time, all of a sudden you realize that you've mastered certain elements of the craft. And you say, okay, great, I've got all these things down. Now I'm going to go deeper into these areas. And it's something that I find myself constantly doing that. So some elements of producing are completely second nature to me. It's like, I don't have to think about what to do. It's like, oh no, this is the right answer in this situation.
Yeah.
Others, I'm still really learning and pushing in and studying and reading on and seeking mentorship and trying and failing and trying and succeeding. And so that kind of spiral, I think you can apply it to any area, but particularly with filmmaking is a great one. The second thing I would say is don't try to do it by yourself. Filmmaking is a team sport. Yeah. Don't get bent out of shape about what role you play. Oh, I have to be the director, the writer, the producer, the actor. Just try different roles and find companions and friends and get together and just do it. And if you have one particular area that you're passionate about, I want to be a composer. Well, go out and ask some of your other friends who you see are other people interested in filmmaking. Hey, could I just volunteer to compose the score for your film? And those kind of things. Or hey, if you want to be a writer, ask a director, do you have an idea for a story? Could I serve you? Could I write a script for you? And learn to serve others and build community. And don't try to do it by yourself. It's way too challenging.
Yeah.
The last one I'd say is filmmaking is a lot about who you know and having relationships. So find out how to network. And I think, as we mentioned earlier, the Christian Worldview Film Festival is a great place for that. I would encourage you guys to come out and meet people and take classes and connect with people kind of through that. I'll actually be next week is meeting with some friends out in Colorado, doing some planning and discussing around filmmaker training opportunities for young Christian filmmakers. And so we'll be posting all of our results and opportunities to the Christian Worldview Film Festival sites and things like that over the next year. You should see even more opportunities like that. So that'd be a great resource for you.
You're talking about on Facebook?
Yeah, on Facebook. Yep. To
okay.
their the Christian Worldview Film Festival Facebook page and through that ministry. We're continuing to find more resources for folks. So definitely should check that out.
Yeah, very cool. We'll put links to that as well. And, it's so exciting to see Christian film actually looking really good.
Slowly but slowly, right?
Yep. But better late than never. So,
one last thing I would mention is I would encourage Christian young people to learn how to make movies, but also consider a career in other elements that seem less on set, but are just as necessary. Film distribution, or become a casting director, or become a marketing consultant, or some of those other things. There's a lot of roles that aren't necessarily on set producing that need to happen. And as we seed a lot of those to Hollywood, then you might have a Christian film, but there's no one to help put all those pieces together for it. So pray about and consider if you're called and into this space and interested in this space. Don't think you have to be behind a camera. There's a lot of ways to get involved.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Yes. And definitely go to the Christian Worldview Film Festival next year. It is so great. And it is full of homeschool families. I mean, it's so amazing to see how many kids there are there from birth all the way through, teens. And it's during the week. And so it's great because homeschool families have the opportunity to do that. Though there are some who just take their kids out of school and attend, but it's fantastic. So we'll definitely put links. Do you have dates by chance? I know it's still almost a year away, but do you have dates for next year yet?
It's in March. It's like the second or third week of March.
Okay. And it's in Franklin, Tennessee. So you guys have plenty of time to start saving your money and plan a vacation to Franklin, Tennessee in March of next year to attend the film festival. But Aaron, thank you so much for your time today. I really have enjoyed talking to you and appreciate your encouragement to our audience. And
absolutely.
I'm grateful for all that you're doing. So thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
All right. And thank you guys for listening. Have a great rest of your day, and we will see you next week.